Ohio, representing Team Popping the Boys, the headline god, Jeremy Lambert, and his co-host, speaking out of Atlanta, Georgia, representing more than one royal family, the king of indie viewing, Stephen Jensen. And this is the Spotlight on Fightful.
Welcome, everyone, to the Spotlight here on Fightful. I'm Jeremy Lambert. That's Stephen Jensen. And shout out, as always, to Big Dick MLJ for the intro. We had a lot to talk about in the world of professional wrestling. But guys, if you're here, we appreciate you. Leave a thumbs up on the video. That goes a long way. That helps us out. If you're in the chat, leave a super chat. Get your question, comment, statement read on the air, or just leave a chat. We like interacting with our chat, and our chat's usually very kind to people, so don't be afraid to leave us a message there. This weekend, everybody, on youtube.com/Fightful, it is the Fightful Awards. That's at 6 p.m. Eastern. That is ahead of GCW, ahead of TNA Genesis. So check out the Fightful Awards and then watch some more wrestling, as if you can't get enough wrestling in your life. You can watch more on Sunday night with TNA Genesis and GCW, the People versus GCW. And then afterwards, we have a post show, TNA Genesis post show. I believe Jensen will be there along with Cresta and Joel Pearl. That's on youtube.com/Fightful as well. The Fightful Awards is at 6. Watch some wrestling. Hang out with Jensen, Cresta, and Joel on the post show to talk about more wrestling. A lot of wrestling on a Sunday night. After all your football over the weekend, just so much going on. How you doing, Jensen?
I'm doing good. Yes, I will be on the post show for TNA Genesis with Joel and Cresta, so please join us for that, as Jeremy said. Also, the Weekender will be on Monday. It's MLK Day, but I think I'm still gonna have to work the shoot job. I'm still not 100% sure yet. But I do plan on doing the Weekender. Either it depends on if I have to work the shoot job that day. Either it'll be in the morning or the evening time that gets uploaded. But the reason I'm bringing this up now is because that's going to be the GCW, the GCW Hammerstein review is going to be on the Weekender. So since both those shows are live at the same time, I'm going to do the next episode of the Weekender is going to be just fully dedicated to just a review of GCW, People versus GCW from Hammerstein. So I'm looking forward to that big time, big wrestling weekend. And I'm just going to get it out of the way right away. Remorse Betrayals in the chat. I'm just going to knock it out. I got my Team Moss beanie. So shout out to Randy Moss.
He played about as well as everybody else did for the Vikings.
Yeah, for real. I'll make it short and sweet. Sam Darnold turned into the pumpkin. Like basically what everyone was afraid of happening the entire season actually wound up happening the last 2 weeks of the year when it mattered the most. He played himself out of like $50 million a year down to probably maybe around 30 or so at on the high end.
Or Sam Darnold.
And he made the Vikings decision much easier because we were in a real dilemma a few weeks ago as to what we were going to do, if we were going to keep Darnold, go with McCarthy. I made my thoughts known on that at the time. When Darnold was playing well, I figured we'd probably figure out a way to keep him. Now it's if he wants to stay for 20 mil a season, with the understanding that when JJ McCarthy's ready, JJ's playing, then maybe something short term. But I think most likely that was the last time we saw Sam Darnold play for the Minnesota Vikings. And week 1, QB1 next year will be JJ McCarthy. And I love JJ. I'm looking forward to seeing him as the starter. He looked really good in the little bit of preseason play that he got. The concern, obviously, is that he's had 2 knee surgeries before he's even really been our starter. So that's a little concerning. But assuming that his knee gets back to 100% and that isn't a problem going forward, he should be our guy for the next 5 to 10 years. If he stays healthy and he's good. So, we'll see. But yeah, it was very, very, very disappointing ending to my Minnesota Vikings season. 100%, super disappointing. So, looking forward to the offseason, looking forward to the draft. And, I will say this, heading into the season, the odds makers had the Vikings over under for wins was 6 games, and we won 14. And there's definitely something to be said about when it's not an easy thing to win 14 games in the NFL. So that's an accomplishment that I'm very proud of, and I'm very proud to be a Vikings fan. But the result is the same as if we would have been like, the problem is the NFC North is so strong now that we have to deal with the Lions, who are maybe the best team in the NFL, and the Packers, who are almost as good as we are, and the Bears suck, which is nice, but we basically ended one and done in the playoffs. So like the 14 wins doesn't really mean a whole lot at the end of the day, unfortunately. But Skol Vikings.
You sound so depressed. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Maggie in the chat just mentioned, Rob was really sad. Rob Wilkins here at Fightful is also a Vikings fan. I have talked to him in the DMs quite a bit recently. I actually keep up with Rob more often than pretty much anybody through Fightful. Like, I'm not like super on social media like often. I don't really go back and forth a whole lot with many people, but me and Rob stay in touch pretty consistent. He's a great guy, and I feel bad for him too, because he's living this every year just like I am. My main thing is I just want to see I really want to see the Vikings win a Super Bowl before I die. I mean, obviously, but even more importantly, I want to see it happen before my dad dies. Like my grandpa's already gone, and my grandpa was a season ticket holder from literally the year before the Vikings existed, when they started putting up pre-sales for season tickets. My grandpa was a ticket holder from that long ago, and went that whole time on his whole adult life, and never got to see it happen. And my dad's getting up there. I'm starting to get up there. My brother's starting to get up there. Like, I don't have kids. I don't know if I'll ever have kids. Like, despite this whole Vikings craziness, and my family might end with me. So like, they need to win the Super Bowl in my lifetime, but more importantly in my dad's lifetime. So hopefully that happens soon. But I'm gonna definitely. It's not going to give up. I mean, I'm always gonna back him up. I'm always gonna be a fan. I'm always gonna watch all the games. So.
If the Lions can turn it around, any team can turn it around.
Yeah, that's a good mindset to have for your Panthers as well. Like, they didn't look great, but there was flashes of greatness. Like, Bryce Young is a great quarterback. I think he'd become a great quarterback, and you have some young talent there. Should have some good draft picks. So hopefully you guys turn it around too.
I'm not worried about the Panthers. It's basketball and hockey season. That's way more time consuming. Football season's long been over for me. Ryan Adams, who seems to be a Vikings fan, says, for a team whose season started with a player tragically dying, 14 wins is a great thing. Bring on the JJ era.
Yeah. Bring on the JJ to JJ era, 100%. And Skol Vikings. Thank you, Ryan, for being here in the chat. We've definitely noticed you the last few weeks. Very, very much appreciated with the generous super chats.
Appreciate
the Vikings. It's good to know we have some Vikings fans in here, though. I'm glad. I feel the Vikings community is, because we've all just been through it for so long. I've been watching this team my whole life, since as long back as I can remember. We used to go to the bar with my dad, and I'd sit there, at the bar and look at all the screens around the bar. And that was back when, people could smoke inside and stuff. I remember just being like a little kid surrounded by cigarette smoke and just like watching the Vikings when I was a kid, and my whole life. That's been my team. It's my favorite professional sport by far, outside of MMA, but team sport. And it's a bummer. But there's like this sad, there's like this weird comfort in like having Vikings fans also, because it's just, we've all been through it year after year. We've never won the Super Bowl. Our team has never done it. So it's got to happen eventually. And Kevin O'Connell, I love Kevin O'Connell, our head coach. I love Quessio Duffamensa, our general manager, but there are flaws in O'Connell's coaching and time management and stuff that he needs to tighten up. But it's going to be interesting. This is the last thing I'll say about football, because people don't want to hear it. It's going to be interesting because, Brian Flores, our defensive coordinator, who was once an NFL head coach, he'll probably get head coaching job offers. Josh McCown, our quarterbacks coach, is probably going to get offers with other teams, potentially head coaching jobs as well. Like, our coaching staff may get gutted, and Kevin's going to have to figure out what to do about that, put the right people in place to get the job done. But I have faith in him. I like Kevin O'Connell a lot, and I think he's done a lot for the culture of the team. It's a 180 attitude adjustment since Mike Zimmer left, and so I have mad love for the Vikings. Like, I love the team, I love the players. Like, just disappointing. It's disappointing for someone like JJ, Justin Jefferson. Like, he's a competitor. He's arguably the best receiver in the league. Definitely top 2, top 3, no matter who you ask. And it's like, we got to get this guy some rings. But Skull Vikings. Let's talk about wrestling.
I need to finish the story. In the WWE, the story never finishes.
Story that just started on Monday was the debut of Penta. As Michael Cole explained, the worst kept secret in wrestling. He was the mystery luchador to face Chad Gable. He officially made his WWE debut. I don't want to say they spoiled it, because they literally put up a graphic last week saying Penta, and then they put the merchandise on WWE Shop on Monday afternoon, really Monday morning. So it happened while we were doing it in the leads. They put up the mask and everything, so you knew it was Penta on Monday night. In his debut, got a victory over Chad Gable, cut a promo afterwards.
Sorry, I lost you right at that. What was the last thing you just said? My headphones cut out. Can you guys hear Jeremy? Is it just me? Hello?
What did you think of Penta's debut?
There. Okay. No, now I can hear you. Okay. I heard everything up until that sentence. Okay, I'm good now. I thought it was awesome. I was saying this months ago when there was a speculation that Penta and Phoenix would be leaving AEW. And remember, I was like, if they come in together, Penta and Phoenix will be the tag team champions. I think I said like within 4 months was like my prediction. But obviously the timeline is going to be a little skewed because Phoenix hasn't been able to come over yet. Even when he does, I don't know if they'll immediately team them or if they'll do something where like kind of they have singles runs parallel to a tag team run. Because the thing with Penta specifically is, because I also said during those predictions, by the way, I said Penta would also, what did I say, wrestle for like a championship at WrestleMania or something. Like I can't remember exactly what I had even higher hopes for Penta than I did for Phoenix. I'll just put it that way. Like if it came down to just one versus the other, I think Phoenix has he's younger. Phoenix is probably like 5 years or so younger than Penta is. So he has an advantage there as far as like potential longevity. And he's more of like a high flyer than Penta is also. Like he can be more of quote unquote like the next Rey Mysterio that they've been looking for forever. Like I know people always bait those comparisons, but like Rey Fenix is more like a Rey Mysterio type to me than Penta is. Penta is just ultra marketable. And he's somebody where like, the masks are going up for like $75 already or whatever. And like his gear looks cool. The masks look cool. I like the theme song. Like I knew he got the flames, the fire, pyro entrance and all that stuff. Like they made Penta out to seem like he was a really, really big deal right out of the gate. Remorse Betrayal says they need to sell his gloves 100%, even if it's just the one glove that people can like take off and do the Sarah Miedo thing. Like I definitely think they should sell gloves for Penta as well. I definitely agree with that. This is going to be one of those, not necessarily on the scale of like Cody leaving AEW to WWE, because Cody is literally the biggest star in wrestling. So that right there looks bad on AEW for losing Cody. And then you look at Punk, and Punk's probably one of the top 3 biggest stars in wrestling right now. Like it's like Cody, Roman, and Punk are probably the 3 biggest stars in wrestling right now. And at least in my opinion, that's obviously going to be up to your own opinions, but I think those are the top 3. You can put them in whatever order you want, but Cody, Roman, and Punk are the guys right now. And AEW had 2 of those 3 guys. And now Penta, they try to make it sound on commentary. They said something to the effect of like, he's pretty much like the consensus second best luchador of all time to Rey Mysterio, which I don't necessarily agree with. But like, I understand Pentagon was absolutely the best, like Hispanic masked wrestler available that they could have possibly gotten. Like, I definitely think that that's the case. but it's hard to say Penta's like the second best luchador of all that. It's also, there's also people that would like disagree that Rey Mysterio, I mean, I think Rey Mysterio is the GOAT, but there was some luchadors before Rey that like older fans might, consider and stuff like that. But my point really is Penta is going to be one of those that fans are going to look at as like another huge fumble by AEW. Like, how did they not do more with this guy? And I think he's going to have a humongous run in WWE. I think, and that match with Chad Gable was great. Like, he didn't go out there and squash Gable. Like, they had a legitimate match. He had a Canadian or a Mexican destroyer. He did the sacrifice. He did the Penta driver. Like, it's if they can make Penta, I don't think he's going to be out there like killing off people on TV, obviously, but if they can make him as close to kind of like the presentation we saw in Lucha Underground when he had that run of the singles, for years over on Lucha, that's what I want to see from Penta. Like, give me a legit singles run, and if and when Rey Fénix comes over, if they want to team him, that's fine too. But like, yeah, I think Penta came across as a huge star, and I think that momentum will continue. I think WWE is going to know what to do with him. They're going to know how to market him. He's going to be one of the top guys in the WWE, I think.
D'Lo Diggs says the worst kept secret in all of wrestling, which was a line from Michael Cole on Monday. I don't want to say AEW fully fumbled him, because I know that's a big narrative going around, and I don't think that's fair to AEW. They had him as a really strong tag team wrestler in a position for the tag team division. Him and Phoenix held the titles. They had great matches. They were the trios champions with Pac. They were going to win the trios titles at AEW All In, in that ladder match. But then that's when kind of everything started to happen with them apparently wanting to leave. So it ended up being Pac and the Blackpool Combat Club who won those titles. Could he have been a bigger single star? Maybe. I don't know if this was their thinking or what they saw. I have no idea. You'd have to ask Tony Khan, and then you would just get the answer if everything was great. Lucha Underground, he was very protected with the editing and the way the show was shot and put together, where you saw he wasn't quite that same performer in TNA, and he wasn't quite that same performer in AEW. Like, Lucha Underground, because the matches were all taped and they had a certain aura around them with the presentation that is easier to pull off when it's a taped show and you can edit everything together, where you can't quite do that as well live. So I think maybe they saw a little bit of that, like, this is not quite the same guy that we got in Lucha Underground. I think they did about as well as they could have with Penta. The mask stuff seemed to be a deal where he wouldn't sign over rights, or Mask Republic wouldn't sign over rights. Somebody wouldn't sign over rights to do the mask, and so AEW wasn't going to bother. Maybe they could have pushed a little bit further on that. I don't know. Again, that's not something I'm privy to. But I don't think it was a thing of we didn't want to sell a mask. I know AEW's merchandising department has its own issues, so it honestly could be a thing of we didn't want to sell the mask, or they couldn't figure it out. Regardless, they couldn't figure out how to sell the mask, whether it was Penta, whether it was a third party, whether it was them. They couldn't get it together, where WWE clearly got it together before his even official debut. The debut was great. I can't say anything bad about the debut. The presentation was there. The aura was there. The match was good. He messed up the leg drop, but it happens. Everything else looked good. It looked very smooth. Now we'll see if they can continue that, because they're very good at doing debuts and making people feel like a big star upon debut. What are you going to do with him after? Where is he going to go now? What's he going to be involved in? I don't think you could just put him as, hey, here's the LWO member Penta. I don't think that quite works. So I'm very curious of what the follow-up is to this. It's very easy to do a debut where everybody is very excited, because that's what a debut is. Especially they did a good job with the vignettes running for the past few weeks. But now you've got to keep that momentum going.
Well, I mean, it was not even just the masks. Like WWE, okay, obviously WWE is the bigger machine. They're like they can get stuff done. They're a whole different animal than what AEW is. Like AEW is competition to a degree, but I think we can all understand the massive, massive difference between the scale of what WWE is and what they can do with their teams versus what what WWE is versus what AEW is. And that's even down not just the mask getting figured out immediately, the name. Like Penta's been running around in AEW, Penta El Cero Miro. Like it's a Penta El Zero M. These are bad names to be marketing. Not like they're offensive, but it's too long, it's too wordy, it doesn't sound right. Pentagon Jr. was fine, but they lost the rights to that. And of course, he shows up in WWE and it's just Penta. That's simple. That's easy. That's what it should have been in AEW, but for whatever reason, it wasn't. The merchandising stuff with AEW is a whole other conversation itself. I can talk about that forever, about how bad their merchandising game is. It's terrible. I love the action figures. I love Jazzware. Shout out Jeremy Padour, our buddy. But like outside of the action figures, their merchandise game is garbage, to be honest. Like it wasn't good when Miss Jackson was in charge, and it's not good now. Their shirts are lame. You wouldn't want to wear them in public. It is what it is. And even at the live shows, they don't have enough stuff for people you want to get stuff for. Like even during Sting's retirement run, like they didn't have enough Sting stuff for people to buy. Like, and it's a problem. It's a problem when I'm an AEW fan, and I don't know. The only AEW merchandise I own outside of their action figures, outside of what I've gotten in like random loot crates, which aren't even technically off of like AEW shop, the only thing I've ever gotten is like that original AEW logo shirt, because everything else is lame. Like MJF comes back from injury and he has a black shirt with like Times New Roman text that says the Wolf of Wrestling. It's like it's terrible. Like if you go on their website right now and you look at AEW shop versus WWE shop on like one screen side by side, and it's a complete joke in comparison to what WWE's merchandising is. So there's that. That's a whole other conversation. I disagree to a degree with you about them fumbling him in AEW, because it feels like when AEW started, he was treated as a big deal. The Lucha Bros were treated as a big deal. They had one of the best tag team matches in the history of the company. That cage match with the Young Bucks that they had was absolutely incredible. And the entrances for that match were incredible as well. That whole experience was like one of my favorite moments that AEW's had. But in like the last few years, I know there's been injuries and stuff, but like I think they could have gotten much, much more out of Penta. And if there was any kind of like inkling about like when Phoenix was injured or them wanting to leave and stuff, like I don't know, they should have. I'm not necessarily saying they could have figured it out to keep Penta around. His mind might have been made up for a while, but there's a reason his mind got made up. You know, like I mean, at a certain point, he probably was looking around like, why am I still doing this? Like there's interest in the other company. Probably I'll try my luck elsewhere. And I don't know. I agree with the fans that think that AEW fumbled Penta. You brought up good points that like there were pockets of time where like he was treated like a big deal in AEW for sure. But you know, TNA, he was the world champion. Lucha Underground, he was the world champion. He's been champion where else? Like AAA. I mean, other places, other countries. And for AEW, they pretty much just relegated him to being a tag team and trios guy. Like they never gave him a real chance as a singles wrestler. And I think that was a mistake.
And the times he did have a chance as a singles wrestler, like that Cody match. I know you remember that Cody match. That match was awful. Yeah, that was an awful match. The match against Punk wasn't great.
Well, Punk botched. People forget that Punk tried to like a hurricane rod off the top and fell. Yeah.
Dominic Mysterio didn't forget.
Oh, right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the match with Punk wasn't great. Like I don't remember a standout Penta singles match. And you know,
there weren't that many though. There really weren't that many to pick from.
Maybe he could have had more, but this goes to a different issue with AEW is they have so many guys, and clearly they didn't see Penta on that level to where they were going to make him a singles guy. I'm not going to say WWE sees him on that level based on one match where he beat Chad Gable, who, let's be honest about where Chad Gable is. He's just kind of guy who loses a bunch as well. Like, I like Chad Gable, fantastic performer. They're doing stuff with him. But Chad Gable is a mid-card act at best. Penta beating him is okay. They've put him in the mid-card for right now. What are they going to do with the follow-up? AEW didn't see him as anything more, at least from what we saw on the television, how they booked him, as kind of a trios guy or a tag team guy. If he just had mid-card singles matches where he beat guys you knew he was going to beat, but lost the top guys that he was going to lose to, would that have been better?
Sorry, what was the last thing you said right before you said, would that be better?
Would it have been better if he was basically in a Powerhouse Hobbs position? Powerhouse Hobbs is a guy who...
Not necessarily because... Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you saying?
Fun. I would say Powerhouse Hobbs is a guy who he wins against guys you figure he's going to win against, but then, look, he lost last night to Moxley. I understand that was a world title match, but he lost previously to Takeshita. And I know he's been injured, but before he was injured, he was a singles guy who was going to beat guys you knew he was going to beat in the mid card, and then anytime he faced a top guy, he was going to lose to that top guy.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I would say I wouldn't necessarily want him in the same position as Hobbs, because I think Hobbs is going to get like super lost in the mix coming off of the loss to Moxley. But that I think is more of an AEW problem than a Hobbs problem, though. Like, because a lot of the stuff that I'm saying about Penta right now, I think we're going to be basically echoing to a degree when this happens with Malachi. Like, another guy who, like, when Malachi Black came in AEW, he destroyed Cody. I mean, just they put him over to where it was like, oh, this is like an immediate top guy, and he looks absolutely unstoppable. And they had Cody like leaving his boots in the ring like he was going to retire and all this stuff.
Sucked.
And but my point, whether you liked it or not, my point is that they right out the gate they try to position Malachi like he was an unstoppable, huge deal, big star, top guy, and then he didn't wrestle like any singles matches for like years. Like, he wasn't even on Dynamite, like, ever. And it's like, so when he goes to WWE again, which I'm assuming will probably happen soon, and I get that they kind of fumbled him in WWE prior to his AEW run, but that was also different management. Triple H did really well with him in NXT before he was, being taken, before he moved to Vince, essentially. And now Triple H is in charge, so you'd assume Malachi, Aleister Black would probably have a better run now if he came back. What's that look in your face? Explain to me why you don't think that if Aleister Black went back to WWE, he'd have a better run now than he did before he left?
Maybe before he left, because he wasn't super utilized when he left. He was doing that knock on my door thing, like he's Three's Company. But I'm not going to say Aleister Black, Malachi Black is going to have this great run just because Triple H booked him well in NXT. Triple H booked him well in NXT because Triple H was running NXT like a super indie and didn't have to worry about things. And Malachi, Aleister, came over as one of the top names, certainly on the European independent scene. Tommy End coming over there and is like, oh, we can make him special over here. That ain't the case when you're main roster WWE and you got Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes and CM Punk and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn and the Usos and Gunther. You ain't coming in there and just being like you were in NXT, where he was heavily protected and was running through people, because he ain't going to run through people on the main roster. And there was stuff with AEW of why he wouldn't wrestle singles matches, whether he didn't want to lose those matches, whatever it might be, but he's not going to come in and just be this. I'll take Karrion Kross as a very big example here. Look how he was booked in NXT, because Triple H loved him in NXT, where he ran through guys, and then Triple H is booking main roster. Kross is in a fine position. He's on television consistently. He's got some decent stories going on. It depends on your flavor of things, but he certainly ain't NXT Karrion Kross just because Triple H is booking main roster now.
Yeah, but you're also missing what happened in between there. Karrion Kross ran through everyone in NXT, and then they put him on the main roster under Vince, and he came out looking like a gladiator and got released, and then came back, and now at least has a spot on the show where he's being used consistently.
Okay, and I expect Malachi to be used relatively consistently, but
right,
you were saying that
AEW didn't use him like at all.
But whose fault is that?
I don't know. I mean, if can I actually blame Malachi though? Like, who's the boss of the company? Malachi doesn't run the company. Like, if Malachi doesn't want to do it, Tony's got to go make him do it. Like
that's a little bit easier said than done.
But it's the truth. Like, do you think that happens in the WWE where they're like, "Oh no, I don't want to do that"? Like, you can't.
Corey Graves is apparently.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second. But like that's more of a Tony Khan problem and an AEW problem than it is for the wrestlers. Like, if they have wrestlers like Miro and these other guys that don't want to do what creative is telling them to do, then
why force them to do things if they don't want to do it? Be like, all right, fine, sit at home. I'll just use people who actually want to be here. I'm going to force people to be like, hey, show up and lose and give a half-ass effort out there. I don't want those people to show up to work.
True, but you got to figure something out to where you got to get them out of your company.
Well, Malachi's leaving the company.
Yeah,
but it sounded like he could have been there for another couple of years because Tony said he was under contract till 2027. Now it seems like he's leaving now, so it does seem like he's getting out of the company.
Yeah, that's good, but I think that, like, you know, there's been specifically Malachi. They've been talking about this for years. He, like, who knows how long he's actually wanted to leave and how long they've made him stay around. Same with all these, like.
Well, you just said make him show up to work and work, and now you're saying, oh, they've made him stay around.
I'm saying that at the end of the day, I'm putting it more on the company, because, like, if you're in the NFL, if you're in any professional sport, which you got to consider WWE or professional wrestling to be similar to a professional sport, you can't. I mean, there are players that hold out. So if you want to compare it to that, then that is what it is, I guess. But, like,
Jimmy Butler just got suspended for 2 weeks because he was given a half-ass effort on the court, and he requested a trade, and there was pushback. He requested a trade. And do you know the Jimmy Butler situation?
I know a little bit. I mean, he does this like every team, doesn't he?
More or less. But I mean, he was in Minnesota.
That's probably a him problem if it happens everywhere he goes.
Okay, well, maybe this is a Malachi problem.
It might be. Either way, he wasn't being used on TV.
He was,
and I think he'll get used on a WWE.
He was being used on TV, though.
I guess on Collision.
That's where he wanted to be.
Yeah.
When Punk started Collision, that's where he wanted to be. He wanted to work that show.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I'm not really disagreeing. I think it's my real underlying point here is that I think he's going to go back to the WWE and he's not going to disappear. Like, he'll be on either Raw or SmackDown, and we'll see him consistently. And he'll actually wrestle singles matches.
Maybe. I mean, maybe he will wrestle singles matches.
I don't know.
If he doesn't want to lose, then he's not going to wrestle a ton of singles matches.
Well, I think Malachi didn't want to be there for a long time. It was a long time. Like, I think there was smoke to the fire that Malachi himself kept trying to, like, allude to, like, these aren't true. But, like, I think it's been a long time. This has been a long time coming. So.
Well, I hope he's happy in WWE.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a good position to put AEW in. It's not a good position to put Tony Khan in if you're legitimately, like, refusing to do stuff on the show. But at the same time, like, you have to put some of it on Tony and some of it on the company for, like, you gotta be the boss also sometimes. It's just the truth.
I think every case is unique. I think there are instances where you can say, yeah, Tony needs to be a boss and handle things. And I would agree with you. When it comes to Malachi, I think there are other circumstances to where I don't know if Malachi was super willing to just show up and be like, yeah, sure, I'll do this. And look, if you're not willing to show up and do things, I'm going to use guys who are.
That's fair. Well, and also, like, Matthew Hook says Malachi going back to WWE to do nothing, which is possible. Same for Miro. I actually agree with that with Miro. I think Miro, Miro is a completely different conversation for me because he's somebody that, but there's going to be people that disagree with me, but I honestly believe, I mean, listen, the beginning, when Miro came into AEW, he was with his like initial like TNT title run. I thought it was done pretty well, but people forget when Miro was at his most over in his life, Rusev Day, that whole era, Aiden English, like, I'm not saying he's the one who, like, he's the reason, but like he massively helped get that thing over. And it was like this crowd. It was like a trend. It was like for like this pocket of time, people just decided to like almost hijack the shows, and Miro or Rusev Day, they kind of like made it a thing for a short time. But in my opinion, Rusev was never very good in the ring, very one-dimensional, and I think he was, to a degree, kind of exposed in AEW, but also, for whatever reason, didn't want to do whatever they wanted him to do, probably, and he's been at home for, like, years at this point, just not working. So, like, I think if Miro went back to WWE, I don't think he'd do a whole lot. I think they have other big guys that are like way more talent. For instance, like if I had my choice between like Bronson Reed and Rusev, like I'm taking Bronson 10 out of 10 times. You know what I mean? Like there's other guys that I think can do Rusev way better than Rusev ever could. The performer behind Rusev, and also not having Lana as part of his act, and they're not together in real life anymore. And I get that, but like that was also a big part of it. Like there was the package of Lana and Rusev and stuff. Rusev always needed somebody else out there with him, helping him get over. It was always either Lana or Aiden English. Like him on his own is not very entertaining in my opinion. And after he lost the TNT Championship, I'm assuming AEW probably wanted him to go out there and lose matches because they probably realized there wasn't a whole lot they could do with him either, and he probably didn't want to lose.
These people who go back to WWE and just think things are going to be better, I don't know if they do realize, they don't realize, like, the landscape has changed so much. And I know Triple H used them well in NXT and everything, but again, the landscape has changed so much to where just because you're leaving doesn't mean you're automatically going to get this big spot on the main roster. I mentioned all the guys on the main roster. It's like, yeah, now you got to contend with these guys who have been there for years and been building the company up and everything. Look, CM Punk is a different case because CM Punk has always been a top guy. Aleister Black was a top guy in NXT. Okay, that was, NXT was very low level compared to where CM Punk was when he left. Rusev was a mid guy in WWE for most of his career. Look at a guy like Andrade. Andrade was a top guy in NXT, and then he left, and he was fine in AEW. They did some things and then didn't do some things. He's been back for a year. What has Andrade really done in the year that he's been back? Like, just because you were,
honestly, yeah. No, I agree.
Just because you were a top guy in NXT when Triple H was running things and things seemed cool then, doesn't mean because he's running things on the main roster, you're going to be a top guy on the main roster. It's a whole different landscape now.
I agree.
Speaking of guys who are top guys on main roster, and then we're going to NXT. I don't think I transitioned well on that. Anyway, Corey Graves. Corey Graves was frustrated, to say the least, on Monday night, where he sent out a tweet that said, imagine chasing your dream and it ended. Then you had to do commentary, and you were excellent in commentary. And then you were told you were not a big enough name to continue, and you got sent to NXT. And then it seemed like, oh, is he working? Is he shooting, brother? Tuesday morning, he was like, I got a lot to say on NXT tonight. He was not on NXT on Tuesday night. He has now deleted these tweets. Still not sure. His brother has come out and said, like, it's not a work. It seems like Graves is legitimately frustrated with things. We do know he was on SmackDown calling everything with Barrett for a while. Then Barrett got moved over when Tessitore came in, and so Graves remained on SmackDown with Cole until they went to Netflix, and then McAfee came back. So Cole and McAfee called everything on Raw with Netflix debut. Tessitore and Barrett called everything on SmackDown. Graves was there for NXT New Year's Evil with Booker T and Vic Joseph, and then he was not there. this past week. Don't know fully what is going on with Corey Graves. All we know is he was not calling NXT this week, and it is unclear when he is going to return to commentary. What do you make of everything going on with Corey Graves?
I don't know if you mentioned it, but I think I saw that he was replaced on Speed also. WWE Speed.
Yes, and I think that was like they filmed Speed before Raw or SmackDown, one of the two. But the fact that he's not on either of those shows made it to me like, okay, yeah, he's probably not going to be on Speed, because why fly him in just to do Speed? I think that's a bigger slap in the face than doing NXT matches, honestly.
Yeah. Let me ask you this also real quick before I start giving my thoughts on Corey. How has Joe Tessitore done, in your opinion? I haven't seen a whole lot of him on WWE, just a little bit here and there. But I think he has a good voice and he comes across like a professional. I know of him from like the sports world. Has he been doing well with the WWE since he's been there, in your opinion?
I think he has. I'm not the person who pays like super attention to the commentators. Like if it's bad, I will certainly notice it. And then I might notice a couple other things, but through just years of watching all sports, I've kind of tuned out a lot of commentary.
Well, because I mean, obviously, I was assuming he was better than like some of the guys that tried to do this with in the sports world previously, like Adam Lee and was like Adnan or whatever.
Adnan Virk, yeah.
Adnan Virk. He was there for literally like maybe a month. I mean, that was like,
yeah, if that's the bar, he easily clears that.
Well, no, but I'm just saying like that's happened. Like we've seen that happen with people from the sports world come, even like the coach, who was with the WWE previously, when he came back to the WWE like a few years back, like I don't think he did well when he came back. But as far as Corey Graves, I saw it in the chat, who likes fake shorts, mentioning I think that was him. I missed, it was from right here. Graves versus McAfee. I could see that happening. Because Corey Graves got cleared a few years ago to wrestle again. Maybe this is all one giant storyline. Or they can turn real life into a storyline with this potentially. Maybe. But
I think that sucks.
I don't really know exactly how to feel about it with Corey, because on one hand, I understand where he's coming from. If his mindset is, I came from NXT, I've done NXT commentary. He's had multiple stints doing NXT commentary, and he's been doing Raw and SmackDown commentary for years also. And obviously he's put in the work. I remember still, like, whenever he made that announcement, it was like before an NXT takeover that he was going to even be doing commentary. Like, I remember him sitting there with like Renee and like a panel of people, and he like explained how he couldn't wrestle anymore. And he was so gutted because he had like a decade-long run, like between like the Indies and NXT. And also people forget this was around the time CM Punk left the WWE, and there was a lot of people that were like, oh, this might be kind of like a new, now you can't really say the new CM Punk, but he had a similar look, a similar vibe and stuff. And a lot of the people that liked Punk, it seemed like were starting to like Corey Graves and NXT and stuff. So like, it's one of those things where like he had a really bright future probably as a wrestler. He was the tag team champions in NXT with Neville as well. And if in his mind he's like, if in his mind he truly believes I'm only being quote unquote demoted back to NXT because they feel like I'm not famous enough to be on Netflix, or they don't think I'm professional of a broadcaster like Joe Tessitore or whatever he's got kind of in his head, I could understand frustration about that. I just don't know how. It's impossible for me to, because I don't know the situation fully. I'm not in Corey's head, obviously, but like, there's also a part of me that's like, you should also be grateful because like you are in a great position. Like, it's not like the WWE has a lot of commentators like Corey Graves, because there's been so much shifting. It's not like Corey Graves is going to be in NXT forever. Like, I would imagine it'd probably be a fairly short thing, and then they'd shuffle him around back to one of the other shows. Probably, you know what I mean? Just because, but I get it though. Like it can't feel good to feel like you're being demoted for no fault of your own, and you're seeing people like Pat McAfee and Joe Tessitore come in who have way less knowledge of like what's been going on week to week for the last, decade or whatever. And like, I see both sides of it. So, I hope it's a storyline though. I think it'd be actually pretty cool if this turned out to be a storyline or they turn it into one.
I don't think it started as a storyline. If it gets turned into one, I don't have much interest, especially if it's leading to a McAfee and Corey Graves match. That doesn't serve anybody in my mind. I don't think announcer feuds are good. I don't think it accomplishes anything. I don't think you can really go anywhere after an announcer feud because McAfee and Graves wrestle, and then what? McAfee's still just calling matches on Raw, and Graves is doing what? Unless Graves is returning full time, but then does he beat McAfee? I don't think announcer feuds are good. I think because
I was there live at WrestleMania 27 for Michael Cole versus Zero the King Lawler. You're gonna tell me you didn't like that? Being a fan of bad wrestling?
Being a fan of bad wrestling, yeah. Being a fan of good wrestling.
WrestleMania. Yeah. No,
I don't think announcer feuds are good because I don't think the announcer's job is to get themselves over. That should not be their job. It's to get the talent over, to get the stories over, not to get themselves over. If it happens naturally because they make a good call, a memorable call, then fine. That's part of being an announcer. Part of being an announcer is not just putting yourself over the entire time. And that's what would have to happen, and what does happen when you do announcer feuds. You start worrying too much about yourself and not about the in-ring talent that's actually wrestling and actually performing weekly. So I got no interest in an announcer feud. I understand Corey Graves' frustration because the guy's been bouncing around from show to show. He was asked to do play-by-play, which was not his strength, not his strong suit. When Tessitore came in and Michael Cole was calling other shows, or when Tessitore was transitioning in and Michael Cole was calling, he was still calling Raw with McAfee at that point. So Graves was doing play-by-play while Wade Barrett was on color commentary. And now, because McAfee's back, Graves gets shuffled down to NXT. And if I'm Corey Graves, I'm probably a little frustrated by that I'm showing up weekly, that I've been bouncing from SmackDown to Raw, to SmackDown. Now you're sending me to NXT to do a 3-man booth, which I don't think he particularly likes 3-man booths. I don't think 3-man booths are very good. And I understand that of why am I coming down here to now step on what Booker T and Vic Joseph have? And you're just going to insert me here. And now I got to wait to try to get my lines in because it's tough to get a word in with Booker T as well with the way he does commentary. So I understand that. I get why Graves is frustrated. If it was handled privately, which I don't know if it was reported that he seemed like he tried to make this known privately and brought up privately, and then it didn't really go anywhere. So he decided to publicly air his frustrations. He's now deleted these tweets. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know if he just sits on the sideline until McAfee is done and goes back to college football and comes back, and then Graves is just going to have to put smile on faces and be like, oh, I'm back, and now I'm just calling this stuff. So something's going to happen with Graves. Don't know what's going to happen with Graves, whether they figure this out and try to smooth things over. But I understand where he's coming from with this frustration.
Yeah, and also to add to that, I think I read something about, I think Corey had, I don't know how recently, but he used to live in Orlando, but has moved from Orlando. And it's now you're making me fly in to Orlando for all these shows again. Even something like that would be annoying to me, where it's dude, I used to live there. Couldn't you give me but I also don't know how long ago he moved, but that's got to be frustrating to for any job for anybody. If you relocated and then they told you have to start coming back to where you just lived, it's all right. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with Corey either, but I guess there's always the possibility that he'll wind up having his next match in AEW. I don't know. Who knows? Do you think he really wants to wrestle? Do you think that's a big part of this? Is he's frustrated that he's even on commentary still, or that he even hasn't had a chance to get in the ring and he's been cleared for 3 years?
I think if he wanted to wrestle, he probably would have pushed that a little bit more. And maybe he has. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe he has pushed that and it's just no, now's not the time kind of thing. but he's been cleared for a while now. So I think that if he wanted to get back in the ring and wanted to do that, there's been opportunities for him to do that. So no, I think the frustration is he has been a good soldier with everything with commentary, and they keep putting him on this show and that show and asking him to do this and asking him to do that. And then when we're hyping up this big Raw the Netflix premiere and now SmackDown is 3 hours on USA, he's just out of the picture. I'd be pretty frustrated by that too. If hey, Raw's on Netflix, this is the biggest time ever for WWE. Corey Graves, who's been here for years, who's done everything we've asked of him for years, he's not around anymore. If I'm Corey Graves, I'd be like, yeah, this sucks.
Yeah, who also, to his credit, had no commentary experience before he started doing commentary for NXT. Like, he was a pro wrestler, and he became a really good and versatile commentator, like you said, having to go from play-by-play to color and show to show and different team to different team over and over and over again. That's understandable because everyone's circumstances are going to be different. Like, people's reasoning is for like not wanting to go out there and lose a match or not wanting to be on this show or that show. Everyone does have to be looked at in different circumstances. And like, I think considering all that Corey's done and how flexible Corey's been for the company all these years, on top of probably also wanting to wrestle and not having the chance yet and this and that, like I'd imagine it. I could understand him why he would be upset about this as well. Hopefully that he had it figured out. Because the other thing about Corey Graves that's good as far as him on commentary is he's still, as far as a commentator, he's still very young. Like, he could be their Michael Cole for like, people forget Michael Cole has been around for so long. Like, he went from getting wedgied by DX in the shower room as like in like his early 20s or however old he was then, to like now he's arguably the best commentator that the company's ever had, especially like longevity wise. I mean, he's been around forever and he's done everything, and he like runs their whole, he's like the behind the scenes guy, like running stuff for their commentary. When he's not out there in front of the camera, he's helping backstage and stuff. Like, and Corey Graves is a guy who, you know, could potentially be there for the next 10, 20, 30 years if he wants to. I mean, he's still young, and he's a former wrestler.
They screwed around Michael Cole on television stuff, but they never did something like this. Like, they might have shifted him. They actually gave him opportunities over Jim Ross. Like, this is largely what they do to like what they were doing to Jim Ross when he was in his later years, and they were trying to put Michael Cole in his position. And then Michael Cole remained a consistent presence commentator on television. They never just took him off. If they want him to be Michael Cole, they probably should just take him off of television and give his spots to McAfee and to Tessitore.
Yeah. So like, I understand WWE wanting to have McAfee and Tessitore for various reasons. So I don't really knock them having them, but choosing them over, actually more specifically Tessitore, it's tough because McAfee is also like seasonal, because when college football comes back around, he's gone again. So those spots are always going to continually open, but it also could be frustrating if you're Corey Graves to see a guy who's a part-time guy who basically gets whatever he wants whenever he shows up in Pat McAfee. But at the same time, to be fair, Pat McAfee is one of the most famous people in the WWE when he's there. Like, outside of the WWE, he has the biggest sports show in the world. So like, you know, I understand why the WWE wants to prioritize having McAfee there. But at the same time, like, they should figure it out to where Graves also, it's tough because like, I don't like 3-man booths, but like you do need to, if you're WWE, in my honest opinion, you need to figure out something for Graves on Raw or SmackDown, whether it's a 3-person booth, whether it's shifting some people around, whether it's making Tessitore do NXT to keep, because McAfee was doing NXT also previously. People forget that. Like, he had to cut his teeth at least a little bit with NXT prior to Raw. So, Matthew Hook says Stephen Pat is bad at his job, though. I actually agree with that, but I think he's good for the brand. It's a weird dynamic. Like, I think he's a terrible commentator, but he's like a hype man, and he brings in non-wrestling fans, and he's very recognizable. Well, I don't know for sure, but you can't undervalue what the McAfee show is in comparison to what all these other sports shows have become on like Fox Sports and Sports Center, all this stuff. His show is so much bigger than anything else right now. And the overall sports world is bigger than the pro wrestling world. So like, I understand them wanting to be in the Pat McAfee business and why they'd want him on Netflix. I get that.
I understand that too. I just don't know if it's really translating to, Pat McAfee is bringing in an extra 100,000 viewers. I don't
know if it's 100,000, but I mean, like, my dad doesn't follow the WWE, but he watched the McAfee show, so like, he thinks he's cool. He thinks it's cool that he's in both. You know, like, there's
people can think it's cool, but if they're not actually watching WWE, what does that really do?
But it's a part of the whole thing. It's more so like the Netflix move than anything else, I think, it's getting way more people like interested at the moment. But McAfee's a part of that. It doesn't necessarily mean like McAfee is the one who's translating 100,000 more people, but like he's a part of the package. Like people tune into Netflix and like they want to see Pat McAfee up on the commentator table doing the eats and that kind of stuff. Like he's a part of the show. Michael Cole loves working with him. Like you can tell he's totally reinvigorated Michael Cole's passion for stuff and the way that he presents himself, and even stuff that Michael Cole will say on commentary. Like he says stuff that's like he would have never felt comfortable saying with previously. And part of that's also Vince being gone, of course. I get that, but like there is. In McAfee, to his credit, has been great in the ring. When he's had matches, his matches are good. So it's like, I got to give McAfee a ton of credit. But like, also, if you're Corey Graves, I could also understand watching this happen in front of you and be like, this is cool and all for this guy, but like, this guy's squeezing me out of a job. And not only that, they've also brought in this other guy, Joe Tessitore, who has no experience doing this in this world. And he's being prioritized over me. So I think anyone can relate to that with any job. Like if someone started my job right now that I've been doing for the last 3 years and they started day one with no experience, and I found out that they were getting paid more than I was and they were going to take my job and I'd have to go back to doing the job I did before I got promoted, I'd be pissed. I'd probably want to leave my company because of something like that. You know, so I get it.
Move to AEW.
Over 1 million fans and a great number in the demo tuned in. It was a great show, and I think it's been a run of great shows.
The Women's Casino Gauntlet, the first ever Women's Casino Gauntlet last night on Dynamite. Megan Bayne made her Dynamite debut after she was there working AEW Dark during the pandemic time, and then it seemed like she was signed, and there was a lot of rumors that she was going to be the bodyguard for Mercedes, who ended up being Camille, and we saw kind of how that worked out. Not sure if it's confirmed. It hasn't been confirmed, I should say, that she has signed. It might have just been a one-off thing because she was there and they decided to use her. She didn't get a graphic or anything like that. So we'll see how they utilize Megan Bayne moving forward, if they utilize Megan Bayne moving forward. But Toni Storm won the Women's Casino Gauntlet, the rookie Toni Storm, and she will face Mariah May at AEW Grand Slam, which seems like it's just going to be in place of Collision. Doesn't seem like it's a pay-per-view. They're advertising that it's going to stream on Max and TNT. The weird thing about Grand Slam is they're saying it's going to be on TNT Saturday, February 15th. NBA All-Star Weekend is that same weekend, and they ain't bumping the All-Star festivities on TNT for AEW. It's usually the opposite. So I don't know if the show is going to be on TBS. I don't know if it's going to air after All-Star Weekend, which would put it at like 10 o'clock, but it's saying it's going to stream at 8 o'clock. So not sure how that's going to work out. The TNT schedule, I've looked, the online TNT schedule only goes to February 5th. So I can't even like look forward to see what the TNT schedule is listing. But I would assume NBA is going to get priority over what's a taped show, because this show's not going to air live at 8 o'clock in Australia, because 8 o'clock in Australia, or 8 o'clock here for Australia, is like 3 a.m. in the morning or something, and they're not going to do that. So we'll see when it comes to the scheduling. But right now it's listed as airing 8 p.m. Eastern on TNT and Max, despite the fact that the NBA is also listed at 8 p.m. Eastern on TNT. Anyway, Tony Storm's getting the world title shot, and Megan Payne was there. Just trying to clear up the how Grand Slam is going to be distributed before we get into all that. But what'd you make of the first ever women's casino gauntlet?
Well, you needed to clear that up, unfortunately, because I don't know if AEW said anything. I know it was on like the graphic that was going to be on Max, but like how, like, I don't want to sit here and like just bash AEW because like I don't like I'm not that guy. I love AEW, but like there's certain like gaping issues in the company clearly, and one of them is like, unless you paid super close attention to a graphic that was on the screen last night, you wouldn't know anything you just said. Like, how's that possible? Like, how is it possible you haven't on television made an actual announcement on commentary or in the ring or played a commercial or something that explains what you just explained to me? Because I bet you a big part of the fan base missed that little graphic and they still don't know where to watch Grand Slam. So, like, that's just baffling to me. As far as the... before I get into that, I want to bring this up because I think there's truth in this, and I will move on because these other topics. But Jason with a good chat here says, "Boys, a contract is a contract. Talent signs when they need to fulfill it. Unless both parties agree to separate for whatever reason, there should be penalties. If not, I 1,000,000% agree with that. If you sign a contract, you should do what your boss tells you to. If you don't want to do it, there has to be some sort of penalty. If you want to stay at home, you can stay at home, but there has to be some sort of paid difference, or you can't just, I agree with that. So anyways, as far as the women's gauntlet, one thing I'll say, actually I got a few thoughts on this. First one is this match actually I think should have been longer. They went I think it was like a 12-minute match. And a lot of these casino gauntlet matches, sometimes they go too long, right? But this one was too short in my opinion. The the AEW women's division, I think they have a lot of talent and people, like, it's almost like I didn't realize it to the degree that I did until yesterday. Like when I saw them all coming out for this match, I was like, there's, regardless of like some of the booking and stuff and like the actual talent now, like the actual like women's roster that AEW has at the moment, I think is very strong. Like they have a lot of really, really talented women. And I do think that AEW, because I'm not one of those guys, y'all know me, I'm not one of those guys who, like, I've always championed women's wrestling, I've always supported women's wrestling. I think there's definitely a place for women's wrestling. I also advocate, especially on the indies and certain promotions and stuff, women wrestling men and stuff, like quote-unquote intergender wrestling. I don't really like the term anymore, but y'all know what I mean by that. And so I'm very pro women doing well in the world of wrestling, but I'm not one of those people that's constantly like, give women more time, give them more matches, give them more main events, give them women's only shows. I'm not one of those people that's like constantly like saying that. Like there's some people who've made it their entire personality that like no matter what's happening, we want more women's wrestling. They're not doing enough women's wrestling. But in my honest opinion, AEW does need to figure something out to get more of these women more featured on Dynamite more consistently. Because the women we saw on the match last night, all those women are great in my opinion. Every one of them I think has a ton of potential. Every single one of them. And that includes the essentially kind of re-debuting Megan Bayne, who has had a hell of a run in GCW over the last year or so. She's been pretty much undefeated. I think she's only lost like one match. And she wrestles mainly men, completely holds her own. She has the look, the strength, the athleticism. Like I've been saying for a long time now, pretty much every episode of The Weekend, or people who listen to that could confirm this. Every time I talk about Megan Bayne, which is pretty much every weekend, I always preface my conversations about her by starting off by saying, I don't know why she isn't already in AEW or WWE. And it's going to happen. Like, there's no way. Like, if AEW doesn't lock her up, if they haven't already, WWE is going to. Like, she checks literally every box you would want out of a star. And I think she looked great in the time that she got in the Battle Royal last night, in the Gauntlet match last night. Like, I mean, they got a hell, and that's not even to mention the talent that wasn't even on, like, in the match. Like Matthew said, like Deanna, Thunder Rosa, Britt Baker, Sheeta, That's of course Mercedes Moné wasn't in the match. Like they got a damn good women's roster right now. So I will say that I do think that if the biggest thing for me coming out of this match, of course, Toni Storm winning makes sense because her versus Mariah May in Australia makes perfect sense. I wouldn't even be surprised if Toni Storm won the title back and like basically admitted that she had just completed the biggest role of her life playing the original Toni Storm. You know what I mean? Like being timeless Toni again. But outside of like Toni winning, the other big takeaway from me from this whole thing was like they got a damn good women's roster, and they do need to figure out a way to utilize their women's talent on Dynamite more consistently, in my opinion.
Well, anytime you can, instead of giving women's matches longer, you can call women a bunch of whores. You got to do it. You just have to do it.
Or is that like the MJF thing? Is that what you're talking?
Yeah.
MJF and Jarrett? I mean, I considered making that my spotlight instead of Samoa Joe. I don't know. I know we'll be talking about Jarrett and MJF, I'm sure, in future weeks again. But yeah, there was a lot to unpack in that one.
I was very surprised this was not like the crossover match, and instead they gave that spot to Jarrett and MJF, and then the material Jarrett and MJF were doing. I was like, I would have much rather this match gone 17 minutes or so and featured more of the women than do anything with that match. Probably could have cut time off of Hook and Christian, especially if you're just going to do a DQ finish anyway, because the memorable thing for that was always going to be just Samoa Joe's return. So if you were just going to do that, could have cut time off of that. You could have just cut the Jarrett and MJF segment altogether if that was the material that you were working with.
You know what that was like, Jeremy? Remember the MTV show Yo Mama?
Oh, yeah.
That was like watching that last night.
Funny.
Yeah, but it was similar like reactions. Like it was like the crowd was like not really that into it. Like they weren't like, it wasn't like a visceral, like from the gut, like, oh, I can't believe you went there. It was like like looking around, like, are we supposed to be like, oh, that was a good burn. Oh, like your mama is this, your girlfriend is this. Like, this is like watching MTV's Yo Mama. Like, give Wilder Valderrama. Get him in the ring next time that MJF and Jarrett go at it.
And that was at least like funny. Maybe it was funny.
It wasn't funny. It was bad.
Well, yeah, maybe it was funny. I was gonna say maybe it was funny 15 years ago, 20 years ago when we were like kids, and this was Yo Mama jokes. But now, if that's what it was like, if I go back and rewatch it now, it's like, oh, this is cringeworthy. Then if this is what this promo was like, well, that was pretty cringeworthy. That was just awful stuff.
Well, and all the people that were in the crowd for Yo Mama were hired. Like I knew a guy. I won't say his name. It doesn't really matter. But like, yeah, I know a guy who got hired to be in the crowd for Yo Mama and like react to the jokes. I mean, it's all fake. But
the Women's Casino Gauntlet was good. Yeah, I'm with you. It felt a little short. I wish they'd gotten a little bit more time. And yeah, they left talent on the table. I know the whole Gauntlet thing is like, oh, well, not everybody got to come out and everything like that. So you can play it off like, well, not, Nyla's on Twitter joking like I was up next, and congrats to Toni Storm. Everyone does that joke after the Casino Gauntlet is like, oh, I was up next. So maybe Britt Baker was after that, and maybe Deonna Purrazzo was after that. But just the talent that were in this match, like, oh yeah, you can do a lot with just these talents. And I do think they've done a better job. Like we just did the Jamie Hayter and Julia Hart feud. We'll see where each of them go after this. We've been doing the Statlander and Willow, kind of Statlander paying for her sins, and we'll see how that continues after this. Harley Cameron's getting consistent TV time. I wish they'd give her a victory. I understand that's not fully her gimmick, but I can only watch her lose so much before she continues to wrestle. Like, all right, well, she's just going to lose this match now. As good of a character as she is, and she's a fantastic character. Yeah. Fantastic character.
The ventriloquism stuff, like, she needs to bring that to TV. Like, that should be her gimmick, that she has a little puppet that she talks through.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, she's a fantastic, fantastic character. I just want her to win. I'm not saying she needs to go out there and beat Mercedes Moné, but they got enough women to call out somebody from ROH. She can't beat Layla Gray on an episode of Collision or something. Like, what are we doing here? She can't beat one of these people. I wish they'd just give her a victory every now and again. But yeah, we'll see if what they do highlighting the women moving forward. Toni Storm was a pretty obvious call, doing the rematch in Australia, and then we'll see if Mariah wins that, or if Toni wins that, or however they do that, and then it leads to the return of Timeless potentially for Revolution, since that's in Los Angeles. We'll see kind of how they play that. The fact that this Grand Slam show is not a big show. I mean, it's not. Like, if it's just going to air on TNT in spot of Collision, that doesn't scream like it's some, big time event. It was supposed to be a stadium show, and it's not a stadium show anymore. They couldn't move enough, and so they had to downgrade the venue, and it's going to be held where it's held now. I don't know what the ticket sales are, but they're obviously way less than they were hoping for, because you don't announce a stadium show expecting, oh, well, now we're just going to move it into an arena. So the ticket sales are way less than they were hoping for. It's not going to be live. It's going to be a taped show on top of that. And I don't know when it's going to air. Again, they're saying 8 o'clock on TNT and Max, but NBA is at 8 o'clock on TNT. Max, you can still do if, hey, watch it live on Max at 8 o'clock, but you can't have two things airing at once on TNT. And again, they ain't bumping the NBA. The NBA is not getting bumped for AEW. They're not bumping the NBA of like, the NBA is on True TV. Not going to happen. Maybe AEW goes to TBS. Maybe this, I was going to call it Collision. Maybe Grand Slam airs on TBS. Maybe it airs after the NBA, but you can watch it live on Max at 8 o'clock. Not sure. I would be stunned if the NBA just gets moved to TNT, because right now the NBA is listed as being on TNT and True TV. But I'd be stunned if they're just like, yeah, you know what? The NBA is just on True TV. Here's this AEW show, because it's also, as people in the chat have pointed out, Vengeance Day, NXT Vengeance Day is also on Saturday night. So you're already splitting the audience of, there's another pretty big wrestling event. I know it's NXT, but we've seen NXT cut into the AEW audience in the past when it comes to Collision episodes. So already splitting that. And they're paying a lot more for the NBA. I understand that, this is kind of the last year of everything, but they're paying a lot more for the NBA, a live NBA All-Star festivities, compared to a taped, glorified Collision. Samoa Joe returned. This was your AEW spotlight. He is back. He has been off television since July, when Chris Jericho put him through a wall. Instead of going after Chris Jericho, he's now going after Christian, because Hook is feuding with Christian, and Christian was going to concerto Hook. I'm glad Samoa Joe is back. He brings a level of urgency, and I don't know if professionalism is the right word, but he brings the realness to the show that it lacks when he and Eddie Kingston are not there. And so it's good to see Samoa Joe back.
Yeah, it's great to see him back. He was gone pretty much because of the Twisted Metal show, right? But I think he'd been done for a minute. So I don't know if they're just like waiting for, I don't know. He's back now. That's what matters. And I'd rather him go after the patriarchy than the Learning Tree, even though, like you said, the Learning Tree is who took him out, attacked him last time we had seen Joe. But it makes sense with Joe's basically like mentoring Hook and all that kind of stuff. So, and I like the group of Hook, Shibata, and Samoa Joe together. I think that's pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to know. Like, it's always good to have Samoa Joe back, because you're guaranteed great matches. There's a level of realness, like you said, when it comes to Samoa Joe. And most importantly, he just has decades of good faith, like, from the fans, like him to the fans and back, like reciprocated. Like the fan base, the wrestling fan base, whether Samoa Joe's in AEW, WWE, anywhere else, Ring of Honor back in the day, TNA back in the day, Joe has always been able to get over everywhere, and like fans of all wrestling, like no matter where you're at, you might be the most tribalistic wrestling fan ever. Pretty much everyone to some degree is a Samoa Joe fan, or at the very least respects Samoa Joe and what he's been able to do for so many years in the wrestling business everywhere. So he's just somebody that he's just good to be in the game. Like, it's just good to have him back. I don't necessarily think we're going to see him go on another run where he becomes like the AEW World Champion again, because I don't really know if there's like a point in doing that, at least in like the short term. But if they're going to do stuff where it's like, right now, if they're going to be doing trios where it's like the Patriarchy versus Shibata, Hook, and Samoa Joe, I think that could be really good. And there's also the tie-in between Samoa Joe and Taz, which obviously ties into Hook in their like group too. People sometimes forget that Samoa Joe and Taz have a little bit of a history from TNA back in the day and stuff. So yeah, there's not a whole lot I can really say about Samoa Joe at the moment because we haven't seen him back outside of just the quick, return to save Hook last night. But it is there's literally no downside to having Samoa Joe back on your show for AEW. You know what I mean? Like this is a positive no matter what that he's back.
I hope they do something with him and Hook, and I know Shibata's part of the group as well. What that is, not quite sure. Like feuds with the Learning Tree and now the Patriarchy, they're fine, but I still assume that the Patriarchy is going to feud with Cope, and Christian still has the cash-in contract and everything. Hook was the match against Samoa Joe last year was a big coming out party for Hook, and then it feels like he's just been in the same feud since then.
Yeah,
I realize he hasn't, but it just feels like he's feuded with like the same. It's really just been Jericho and Christian the entire time since then. Like last night, the match was okay, but there hasn't been this like big improvement from Hook from an in-ring perspective and just a movement up the card perspective. Like I don't feel like Hook is a bigger star than he was when he came out and he challenged Samoa Joe last year. People were very high on Hook last year after that Samoa Joe match. Like, oh, look what you can do with Hook. It just feels like, oh, he's just kind of been treading water with a lot of stuff since then. And I hope they have a bigger plan for him and Joe in 2025. I just don't know what that is.
Yeah. Good to have Joe back, though.
Yeah, very, very good to have Joe back. Cyclops is better than Wolverine, says NBA told TK you can either cruise or wait. LOL. Again, the NBA is not getting bumped for AEW. I would yeah, Ryan saying the NBA Saturday Night festivities are on TNT and True TV. I don't know if AEW made a mistake. It's even TBS. They're going to address it. I hope they address it at some point. Again, I've looked at the TNT schedule. It only goes till February 5th. So can't really do much past that. They're listing it as TNT. That's what they have it listed as for now. Will that change? We're a month away. So they've got a month to figure this out and inform fans of when this show is going to air. I think the fact that it's taken this long to inform fans is not the greatest sign in the world, because we didn't know what this thing was going to be when it was announced. It sounded like it was going to be a pretty big event, and then it's slowly just been, oh, it's a glorified Collision episode.
It's Battle of the Belts.
Oh God.
Let's move on. We have 15 minutes.
That would be awful. All right.
Our product is what it is. We're going straight up the middle.
Is Joe Hendry going to finally win the title this weekend?
Yeah, but it's they waited too long. But I think that the mindset behind what they're doing is, I think Joe Hendry will defeat Nemeth at TNA Genesis this Sunday, and the bigger picture thing is that we'll see Joe Hendry enter the Royal Rumble with the TNA Heavyweight Championship. That's the bigger play in this whole thing. Is, I mean, they could have done this still with Hendry winning the championship months ago and then still be the champion heading into the Royal Rumble and still do what I just said. But I think the timing of it is basically going to be there's a little buzz from, people seeing Hendry win the title this weekend, and then 2 weeks from now or whatever, when the Rumble is, it's still kind of fresh on people's mind that he just won the championship, and I fully expect him to be in the Royal Rumble with the TNA Championship.
I hope he wins the title. I think he should win the title. I think they missed the boat as to when he was at his hottest
For sure.
with the title. And now it just feels like, oh, yeah, we kind of screwed that up. Let's go ahead and put the title on. Obviously, if he's going to be in the Rumble, then that's a big deal. You know, Masha was on NXT this past week. She was attending, and we'll see if they have a presence on NXT moving forward. Him being in the Rumble, having the TNA World title, being recognized as the TNA World Champion, I assume he'll have a relatively good showing. You know, the last time he was in a NXT Battle Royal, he didn't last very long, and then Frankie Kazarian eliminated him, but I assume he'll have a decent enough showing as the champion, and it'll be good. But yeah, it really feels like they missed the boat on him not winning the title at Bound for Glory, and now it's just okay. He's going after it again, and hopefully he wins it this week.
Yeah, and for him, honestly, I don't think that his Royal Rumble performance is going to actually, like the actual in-ring performance, is going to matter even somewhat to the same degree as like the most important thing for Joe Hendry. What the WWE is going to be looking at is does he get a pop when people realize he's coming out for the match, and does anybody, like, how much of the arena is like doing how many people are aware of him before he even gets in the ring? You know what I mean? I think they're going to be really, really interested to see, because that's going to gauge a lot of stuff. That gauges WWE's ability to, like, if and when they sign him over, which eventually probably will happen, just like with Jordan. Like, do they put him back on NXT, or do they think, oh, wow, enough people know him, you can go right to Raw or SmackDown? Like, also, TNA in general. Hey, if Joe Hendry's this over on TNA, how many other people do they have right now that we could plug in if we wanted to bring them over at some point, and stuff. So, that's what I'm really the most interested in when it comes to Joe Hendry potentially being in the Royal Rumble, is how many people are aware of Joe Hendry and are in on who he is before he even gets in the ring. Obviously, it did wonders for AJ Styles. You know what I mean? Obviously, AJ had more years in his career and, had accomplished more in the grand scheme of things before he came to the WWE, but it was similar for WWE. Obviously, different management, but, AJ coming out at the Royal Rumble, that had to have been like, holy shit, this guy's never been in our company. Listen to this reaction. Everyone already knows him. Like that's eye-opening, I think, for a lot of people sometimes.
I think Hendry will get a good reaction. I don't think there's any denying that. But when it comes to TNA, it just feels like they missed the boat a little bit on his on when he was at his hottest and giving him the world title.
They should have pulled the trigger at, I think it was it Slammiversary, the show where they had the 4-way match. It was like him, Santana, Alexander, and Nemeth, I think.
That was Slammiversary was the 6-way. That was the elimination match.
That's what I'm thinking of. So it was okay. I couldn't remember how many people were in that, but like he should have won whatever match that was when it was like he got eliminated by Josh Alexander. I remember whatever match it was where Josh Alexander like low blowed him.
Yeah, that was Slammiversary. That led to the feud with Josh Alexander. I think Bound for Glory is when they should have done it. That was the one-on-one match against Nick Nemeth. Slammiversary was probably the time, and they didn't. But then they did a decent job of building him back up for the Bound for Glory match, and then they had him lose the Bound for Glory match because JBL had to get involved.
That's right. Yeah, so I'm with you. They're pulling the trigger a little too late, unfortunately, but better late than never, I guess. Especially if he winds up in the Royal Rumble with the title. That's kind of the end game here.
I mean, but if he's going to WWE full time, which I don't know if he is, then he might end up losing this weekend as well.
It's possible.
Matt Riddle won the MLW World Championship. They got the title off of Satoshi Kojima, who held it for a good little bit, actually. But Riddle's the new champion. Cruel has a title shot anytime he wants because he won the Gravity Gamble ladder match. I know you watched the show, Jensen. I watched it as well. But what'd you make of Matt Riddle winning the title?
So first off, that Gravity Gamble match, I highly recommend people check that match out. I loved it. It was similar to Feast or Fired, but not in like a bad way. I know that sounds weird, but like Feast or Fired, they have like that concept where they have multiple briefcases and like one of them might be a world title shot. One of them you like get fired, which is a wild concept. But like this match, they had like weapons in the briefcases, and like one of the briefcases had a world title match in it. And this ladder match was crazy. The spots in this match, it was so much fun. There was thumbtacks, there was tons of moves off ladders, through other ladders, through tables, and it was a really, really fun ladder match to open the show. That Cruel wound up winning, and that ties into the main event, as you mentioned, because I've been saying, once again, if you listen to the Weekender, I've been saying this for months. It was very obvious and clear for a long time now that Riddle was going to be the one to dethrone Kojima. I think it became crystal clear after the most recent center stage show for MLW, where Cruel wrestled Kojima for the championship, and the match ended essentially in a no contest because Cruel threw a fire. It was like a dud fireball, like Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, Halloween Havoc style, unfortunately. And when Cruel didn't win the title that night, I was like, okay, Riddle's definitely going to be the one to beat Kojima. But I was saying even before all this happened that in 2025, Cruel will beat Matt Riddle to win the MLW championship. It's just a matter of like, is that going to happen like the next show? Is Riddle going to be more of a transitional champion? Or are they going to have him have an actual run with the title? I know people have various opinions on Riddle himself, inside, outside the ring, and that kind of stuff. I get it. I will say this though, like MLW made it very, very clear and obvious for a long time that Riddle was going to be their guy. And also MLW, historically speaking, especially going back to the reign of like Jacob Fatu, they usually have long title runs for their world champions. Fatu had a long run. Hammerstone had a long run. Alex Kane, I think, should have had a longer run, but it actually wound up leading to Kojima's long run that we just talked about that just ended. I kind of want to see Riddle hold the title for at least a little while because I like seeing the longer title reigns for the MLW champions. But once again, I think the ultimate end game is going to be Cruel becoming the MLW world champion sometime this year. And I think one of my predictions for the Weekender for 2025 was I tried to predict some of the champions who will be like some champions when 2025 ends. And I think Cruel will be the MLW champion at the end of like when 2025 closes. Cruel will still be the MLW champion. So, yeah, congrats to Riddle. I mean, it was a solid match, and Kojima's out there busting his ass every match. Like, you know, he's going out there working his ass off. He's obviously up there in age. He's got a ton of miles on him, but he still goes out there and he bumps around. He hits his lariatos. He's wrestling, and he's been pulling double duty. He does tag team matches with Akamura and stuff. Like he's people got to give Kojima his credit. He also the only ever, you know, 2-time MLW world champion and stuff. So Kojima deserves his flowers too, in my opinion, for the work that he's done. But Riddle makes more sense for the championship at the moment, and it you know, I definitely saw this coming. But it may, you know, sometimes the predictable thing is just the right thing to do.
Part of me wondered if Cruel was gonna like cash in immediately on Riddle and take the title, because I was with you that Riddle was gonna win. It was just, are they gonna go ahead and do the immediate Cruel cash in, or are they gonna wait on that? And then when they were doing the celebrations, like, yeah, Riddle's not really banged up or anything. It was a short match, which I got no problem with. Everyone knows my wheelhouse is like 12 to 18 minutes. Didn't need this overstaying its welcome. Didn't need this to try to be a 20-minute epic between Matt Riddle and Satoshi Kojima. So I thought it was good for what it was, and pretty predictable with Riddle winning, but it doesn't mean it was bad or anything like that. Riddle is what he is. You know, he's fine in the ring. But I did like the Gravity Gamble ladder match. I thought that was in a business where it is still very tough to come up with kind of new, fresh match concepts, because it feels like everything has been done, especially variations of ladder matches. Doing something like this, which we've seen in WCW before with the
I forgot about
on a
that.
pole, box on a pole stuff, and the famous
it was falling off.
Booker T, Booker T having the Scott Hall photo and everything. And you mentioned Feast or Fired, where there's different stuff in the briefcases, and what are you gonna get? So it's not like this is a totally new concept, but I did like that it was, hey, it's one thing. You earn one thing, it's the contract. Everything else might be nothing, or might be a weapon. Obviously, you figured the last briefcase that gets pulled down is going to have the contract in it. Would have been hilarious. So much like, I'm just going to pull the first briefcase down, and here's the contract. Match is over. But I thought it was a cool little concept that they were able to do here in a new twist on the ladder match.
Yeah. Good show from MLW.
Yeah, I love the MLW shows. They're done in like 2.5 hours, if that. Like, I think this show is just over a little 2 hours. Love it. Don't know why it started at 10. I hated that. Didn't need to start at 10.
They're free on YouTube. It's great.
Yeah, no real production issues. There was, I think it was during the Gravity Gamble match that like the screen went black for a little while. We didn't miss the finish or anything, but the screen did just go black for like a couple of minutes. Otherwise, the production was good. Usually there's always like one production issue when it comes to MLW.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens there, but
I'm gonna give a big motherfucking shout out.
Kevin Blackwood won the West Coast Pro Championship this past weekend, and he also faced Masato Tanaka as well. So I'm gonna kind of peel back the curtain a little bit. We were scheduled to talk to Kevin this week. That's why we don't have an interview this week. Is Kevin was on our schedule. We had he got a little bit busier than I think he thought he was, but it was very, very nice. We had a good conversation with him. We were hoping to get him on next week. So hopefully we'll have Kevin Blackwood for everybody next week, but that is why there's no interview today. Is we just had a kind of a scheduling snafu and things just kind of people get busy, things happen. But yeah, things happen. But again, Kevin apologized, very, very kind, a good conversation with him. Hopefully we'll have him on next week. But he did win the West Coast Pro Heavyweight Championship, defeated Titus Alexander, and then the next night faced Masato Tanaka at Prestige Roseland. So big weekend for Kevin Blackwood.
Yes. Scott George says, wasn't he already the champion? I'm glad you asked that. So he was the champion for quite a while, probably the better part of a year, maybe around 300 days or so. I want to say he was the champion. But he lost the title to Titus Alexander in Japan a couple months ago. So he won the title back from Titus at this show at West Coast Pro. I can't remember the name of this.
Only the Strong survive.
Only the Strong survive. And then Roseland was the Prestige show the next day. Yeah. So yeah, congratulations to Blackwood for him and Titus Alexander both rule. I'm a huge fan of both of those guys. And Titus Alexander is still one half of the West Coast Pro Tag Team Champions along with Starboy Charlie. But then the next night, the next night we had Blackwood versus Masato Tanaka, and that was wild because for a few reasons. Like, one, originally it was supposed to be Kevin Blackwood versus Josh Alexander, and Josh Alexander's final indie match. And I'm really looking forward to talking to Kevin about that because that day must have been wild for him, like with all the change ups on the card and stuff. But Blackwood wound up taking on Masato Tanaka in the main event instead, and it was an absolute banger. Won the match with his top rope double stomp like through a table, and when he hits it, it's like the opponent's standing, so he kind of like goes through them. Really nice finish, and he beat Tanaka. So big weekend for Kevin Blackwood, and he I say it on the weekender often as well, but like he's bell to bell, I think he's legitimately one of the best in-ring wrestlers on the independent scene. And he has he's got a different type of look, a different type of vibe to him and stuff. Like, I like that in people. I like people who are unique, and he's unique. And he's a damn good wrestler. And he also overcame a lot. Like, people always remember that massive car accident that like him and Danny Garcia and the injuries that they went through and the struggle to come back and everything. And Blackwood's, and this is no knock to him, I think he'd agree with this, Kevin Blackwood is way better now than he was pre-injury, like way better now. And I know the injury was years ago, but it's still like to come back from a massive injury and just be able to do it at all is impressive, but he's way better now than he was before. So yeah, we'll leave most of the Kevin Blackwood talk to next week. Hopefully he does, he's able to join us next week. I'm really looking forward to talking to him, and yeah, had a great weekend.
And then the other indie spotlight is the People vs. GCW this weekend. I know you're going to talk a lot about it on the Weekender. You just mentioned that the Weekender could be dedicated to the full review of this show. We will have coverage of it on the site on Sunday. We had Cole Radrick on the show last week previewing kind of the tag team title match. We've been talking about Effie and Alley Catch, and is it going to be the time for Effie to win the title from Mance Warner? They announced the former Baron Corbin, Tom Pestock, is going to face Josh Barnett in the Bloodsport match. So I'm very curious how that's going to go, because for people who don't know, Corbin has jiu-jitsu experience and he's a Gold Gloves boxer. So this is not going to be an unfamiliar environment for him. Looks like a really good show. They're unlike last time, which I understood why last time they did this. It's not bring in some AEW people, bring in some outside talent to boost the show. It's a largely GCW style show that you would expect from any weekend for GCW, just obviously scaled up being back at Hammerstein.
Yeah, and then they're still sprinkling in some like old school ECW flavor there with like Masato Tanaka's gonna wrestle Joe Janela. We're still gonna have like Super Crazy, Tajiri, Little Guido. Like, so it's cool how they're gonna mix in some ECW, but I think they're gonna do this way. This is a redo for them. They know the criticisms that people had of their initial show. Some people thought it was mid. Some people made me read that out loud during their promo. But I as far as like this spotlight for now, especially because I'm on short time, I will say, hopefully, by the way, like hopefully Cole Roderick has a good night at Hammerstein, because it'd be good to have him hopefully join us maybe live for a few minutes next week if he's able to recap some of this. But like my prediction for the show, also, by the way, Megan Bain, if you like Megan Bain and didn't know much about her, she's wrestling Atticus Kogar on this show. So if you just became familiar with her through AEW and want to know more about her, tune into the people for GCW.
Really good job of the GCW social media team to put out that graphic and remind people that she is wrestling like immediately after she showed up on AEW TV.
So it's smart. Matt Cardona is going to have, I think, a mystery opponent. Like, there's going to be a lot of great stuff.
Open challenge, yeah.
But as far as the world title mix is concerned, my prediction, I'm going to stand strong on this. This is my prediction for a while. Well, there's two ways I can go with this. The way that I would actually prefer that they go, surprisingly, would be some sort of finish for Effie and Alley Catch where there's a non-winner or both somehow win, and the main event is a triple threat between Alley Catch, Effie, and Mance Warner, because there's enough history between all three of them that triple threat or three-way or whatever, or elimination three, whatever they want to do it, there's enough there that all three of them could main event together. It makes perfect sense to have all three of them in there. But if they're going to do a straight one-on-one for the main event, my prediction is Effie's going to beat Alley Catch, and then Effie is going to defeat Mance Warner. Either way, I think Effie is going to end Hammerstein with the GCW World Championship, unless something wild happens, which somehow results in Cole Radrick cashing in the brass ring or Megan Bain cashing in her do or die challenge. Like, there's two people with guaranteed title shots essentially right now in GCW that could play a factor if they wanted to, but I think because of the story that they've been telling for years, I mean, not just like the last couple years between Effie and Mance Warner, but like going back like a decade, them being part of the second year crew together for so long, tag teaming together for so long, like there's so much history there, and Mance has gotten the better of Effie throughout this entire feud up to this point. It's time for Effie to become the GCW World Champion. So my official prediction is Effie beats Alley Catch, Effie beats Mance Warner, and Effie leads Hammerstein as the GCW World Champion. And I do have to run to work. I'm about to be late. But bye, everybody. Jeremy, wrap the show up for us. Oh, by the way, let everyone know about the time change as well if you haven't already.
I've been hyping this when it comes to a major announcement. So let's not step on my big hyping here.
Good seeing you, Jeremy. Good seeing you, chat. I'm about to run over to my other setup, and I got literally a minute to clock in. Bye, everyone. Enjoy Hammerstein. Enjoy TNA this weekend. I'll see y'all over on the main Fightful YouTube channel after Genesis.
Bye, Jensen. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy all the wrestling. Good luck at work today. Yes, as Jensen kind of mentioned, there will be more changes to this show. Nothing bad. Actually, I'm probably just going to end up doing more work, as is customary for me. But I'll talk more about that in the coming weeks. Show's not going anywhere. Show is moving times. So again, I'll talk more about that in the coming weeks, but it also has to do with In the Weeds as well. So we're expanding a little bit when it comes to that. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me this weekend or this week, at least this show. I'll be back tomorrow. With Joel Pearl, In the Weeds, 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on this channel. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I'll mention once again, the Fightful Awards at 6 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. That's on youtube.com/Fightful. Go over there now. Check out the exodus of New Japan in 2016 when AJ Styles, Shinsuke Nakamura Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson left the company, joined WWE. Mike Strahl, who's been on In the Weeds before, who's been on this show before. Mike Strahl narrated that thing's really good. It's about 7 minutes long. Really good informational piece over there on youtube.com/Fightful. So go check that out. Again, Fightful Awards, 6 p.m. Eastern, youtube.com/Fightful this Sunday. I'll be back tomorrow right here, FightfulOverbooked.com. with Joel Pearl in the Weeds, 10 a.m. Eastern. We'll be talking more about Dynamite. We'll be talking about the weekend ahead because there is a lot of wrestling this weekend. Until then, everyone, we appreciate the support. If you're listening on audio, leave us a good review on iTunes or Spotify or however you're listening. That helps the show. If you're rewatching on YouTube, leave us a thumbs up on the video. That helps us the show. Subscribe to the channel. Click that subscribe button, tap that bell for notifications, all that fun stuff. And otherwise, guys, enjoy your weekend, whatever you're doing this weekend. Enjoy the football if your team's still there. If you just like watching playoff football, enjoy whatever else you might be watching. Big shows this weekend. TNA Genesis on Sunday. The People vs. GCW on Sunday. Guys, we'll be back next week talking about it all. All right, everybody.